It's a rainy day out today. I was gonna go somewhere outside for this episode, but it is raining and I couldn't think of anywhere that had a nice protective rain cover. So we're inside today. So welcome. I've done a different viewing angle for today, so we have some outside views. You can keep an eye in the tree for different birds popping around, and there'll be some nice rain on the window and hopefully some good bird songs. This is Eco Show. I'm Henry. This is a show about different happenings in ecology and the environment, from news to research. I usually talk about an animal or plant of the week to start the show, and then I'll talk about a research paper and then some recent news in ecology and the environment. Okay, so our animal of the week this week is the sloth. And it's a rainy day, so it feels like a very sloth kind of day today. There's two types of sloth, the two-toed and the three-toed sloths. And there's 2 species of two-toed and 4 species of three-toed sloths. This includes the critically endangered pygmy three-toed sloth, which we'll definitely have a photo of. And this one is endemic to Isla Escuero de Veraguas off Panama. So it's a little island sloth. Adorable. And these, the 2 and 3-toed sloths, although they may look similar, are actually very distantly related. And bouncing around completely, there also used to be giant ground sloths, which could be up to the size of elephants. Those went extinct around 12,000 years ago, which also is when humans came to their ranges. So sloths are in the Americas. There were giant sloths in North America, but now the smaller sloths are just in South America and Latin America. And so they suspiciously went extinct when humans, around 12,000 years ago. But there were some giant ones that remained until 5,000 years ago on some islands, but then they went extinct around when humans came to that island. So that sort of is evidence that humans may be related to giant sloths going extinct, because there's some question that when most of them went extinct, there was also a lot of climactic change happening. So people are not totally convinced that it was just due to humans. Back to regular sized sloths. They move very, very slowly. They move through the canopy at a rate of 40 yards per day, eating leaves, twigs, and buds along the way. And that slow movement allows them to go undetected from hawks and big cats, like big predatorial cats, not just very large cats, but like jaguars and things like that. So it allows them to go undetected from those predators, which rely on vision to find their prey. They are adapted to be able to hang for long periods of time, and they're so well adapted to hang that they actually can't really walk. They have to drag themselves on the ground. And I don't know if I mentioned this later, but they're so adapted to hang that their hair actually grows a different direction than most other mammals. So usually mammals have hair growing sort of away from the extremities, downwards, in the way of, you can think of a dog or whatever, that the hair sort of points down towards the ground. I'm not explaining well, but they have the hair that they have grows in funky directions because they're hanging for so long. So when water and things like that are coming down, it needs to be able to fall off of them. They have a very slow metabolism and will sleep for 15 to 20 hours per day. And that is, their metabolism is less than half of that of mammals comparable in size. Surprisingly, I'm not sure if this is completely related to metabolism, but I think it would be, but they can hold their water, they can hold their water under breath. They can hold their breath underwater for 40 minutes, which is pretty amazing. Their shaggy coat, so their hair that I tried to describe earlier, is grooved and hosts green algae. That algae camouflages the sloths, and it also nourishes sloth moths. So the fur of sloths is its own little ecosystem, and their fur hosts bunches of other bugs and things. They are good swimmers, like we mentioned. They can hold their breath underwater for 40 minutes. And they have color vision, but poor visual acuity and hearing. They mostly rely on smell and touch to find food. They are omnivorous, but I don't know what they'd catch. I guess they'd catch insects and things. They poo on the ground, so they have to go down to the ground in order to poo and pee, and they do it about once a week. And they bury it in a hole. It's a mystery why they bury it in a hole, but some ideas about why they bury it is that their ancestors did it and they just kept on doing it. It may guard against detection. So since they're staying in trees and not moving around very much for long periods of time, it would make sense that you would want to be not easily sensed out, because you're not going to be going far from where it is that you are hanging around. And moths that live on them deposit eggs on the poo, which develop and then fly up to live on them after eating poo. So I don't know if that's a reason, but that happens. And that's about all we have on sloths. So I hope that section was appropriately sloth-paced for any sloths in the audience listening along. If you're a sloth, be sure to let me know in the comments if there are interesting facts about you that I have missed. Okay, onto our research article for today. The title is Artificial Light at Night Affects Plant Herbivore Interactions, and that's by Ellen Sierrad et al. And some background on this research is that since the beginning of time, animals have been adapted to the consistency of light and dark cycles. We haven't had fire for that long. Even humans, Well, I don't know how long humans have had fire for, but for the most part, it's just been nighttime, daytime for all of us. But in the last 100 years, this has been vastly disrupted by artificial light at night, which is abbreviated as ALAN, or as I will say, Alan. So Alan has disrupted sleep for the past 100 years. And some issues that this can cause is death by attraction, which is a cool sounding way to die, but it just means that light is attracting different animals that may be associating that light source with either the moon or some other sort of thing. And they either get too close to the light or it leads them to get into a hazardous space. Artificial light at night has also led to habitat loss. So species that are relying on darkness in order to survive are or have been losing habitat because if it's too bright, either they can't hide or their prey moves. And this can lead to effects on the whole food web. So if you have a little bit of an impact of light at night on where a certain insect is going to be, that can have big repercussions all throughout the food web. And most of the research that's been done on artificial light at night has been on individuals, not food webs. So what they were curious about in this research is how is artificial light at night impacting plants? And by understanding how artificial light at night is impacting plants, you can then look down the food web to see what bigger impacts of that could be. And this is important to understand because 2/3 of key biodiversity areas are impacted by Alan. Get Alan out of here. Okay, so their key question, does Alan flow through the food web? Is Alan in your food web? Get Alan out of your food web. I can't believe this. Can't believe the gall of Alan hanging out in the food web, hanging around, messing things up. Okay, so they're looking at artificial light at night and does it flow through the food web? So their methods, they exposed multiple plants, including blueberry and oak and a brassica, which is like, I don't remember which brassica it was in particular, but broccoli or a brassica, I believe. They exposed these plants to different light types, and these different light types impact how plants grow. And then they measured the changes in the plant traits, so the size and thickness of leaves are an example of that, and they measured how the plants were eaten by bugs. So they're looking at, and that's how this is a food web thing. So they're first looking at, they're shining different types of light, and we've got an image here. They're shining different types of light on plants, which will impact how the plants grow. And they're looking to see if that also impacts what plants are eaten. Because certain types of light may be used to, there's like ideas of smart lights, and so some ideas for reducing artificial light at night are shining different wavelengths of light that aren't expected to impact bugs, but they could impact plants. And they found that there was an impact of increased herbivory with the light treatments. But in some cases, the light that should make the leaves not tasty were eaten more. So they found, in different cases, they found a few conflicting results. They found that, yes, artificial light at night increased some plants being eaten, but they also found that a artificial light at night that should make the plants less palatable was eaten more. And so it would make it less palatable because certain wavelengths of light may induce a plant to grow in a way that it produces more chemicals that make it less appealing to bugs or make it harder to eat. And so the conclusions from this is that there are very complex relationships between insects and plants, and you can't just rely on using light of a particular spectrum that is hypothesized to have less impact. And they recommend some practical ways to present light impacts are smart lights, which just turn on when people are walking by, or light covers. So it was a good sort of exploration of this, of seeing that this is so complex, and so some ideas of why a certain light type that was beneficial for the plant to be eaten, even though it shouldn't make it more palatable, or that a certain light type may be more attractive to a particular insect to be around. So it's very complicated, and they're just looking at some simple examples here. So keep an eye out. I always see this every once in a while. Sometimes you see trees that are growing near lamps at night, and oftentimes the areas that are near those lamps are just cooked. The plant looks like it's not growing well at all. So the moral of the story is that plants grow in complicated ways, and the interactions of insects and lights are even more complicated, but light is impacting how plants grow, and it's impacting how insects eat. So it's a very important area for future study, because climate change alone is already having big impacts on how things eat and survive. And light is something that we can directly control and try to change to make habitats more friendly for things. So there you go. You made it through the research article of the week. Well done. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. And now we're on to the news. Our first news article is from the BBC. And this news is that, and I will likely mess up this name, so I apologize in advance. Alessandra Korap Munduruku is the winner of the Goldman Prize for South and Central America, and it recognizes grassroots activism, this prize. And Munduruku confronted mining giant Anglo-American, which is like, come on, guys. That's like the most villainous name for like a mining giant. It just sounds awful. And they withdrew 27 research applications to mine in indigenous territory. This was a rare victory. And a quote from Munduruku is, they said, "It may be powerful to you, but to me, the powerful ones are the river, the strength of our territory and our people, the ant doing its work, and the resistance of our people for more than 500 years in the fight for our land." And so these permits had been issued to this mining giant without informed consent from the indigenous communities, which is needed under Brazil's constitution. And Anglo-Americans' move prompted mining company Vale to follow suit, with the miner recognizing that prospecting in indigenous territories required the consent of the communities. So some other mining explorations, it sounds like, have been reversed as well. And another quote from Munduruku, I believe: "Where I live, in the Brazilian state of Pará, along the Tapajós River, there are more and more settlements springing up. My people will rely on fishing to feed themselves, but there are already places where gold mining has contaminated the water and killed off the fish," she explains. "When I was a child, I had immense freedom. We fished in these rivers and lakes. We collected fruits and the seeds we used to make our handicrafts. Starting in 2014, I saw these areas turned into deserts by diggers and other big machines." And this is just to note that this is standing up to these giants is a very dangerous thing to do. In Latin America alone, 212 activists were killed in 2019. So this is a very important ongoing battle. I'm sure that the mining companies will be looking for other ways to explore in ways that undermine indigenous sovereignty, but it was nice to see this little small victory with the abiding by Brazil's constitution. Hopefully there are able to be more victories like that. Okay. Our next article is also from the BBC, and we're talking about re-wiggling. Get your wiggle on. And we're talking about re-wiggling streams. So streams, in many cases, have been straightened for efficiency. And it also, when you straighten a stream, it increases the amount of farmland that you're able to use. So if a stream is usually wiggling and moving across the landscape, by channelizing it, it allows you to have more farmland and allows the stream to move more efficiently from one place to the other. But this has big impacts. The banks can flood over. Oftentimes it's not good for species that need to swim up it, because you have made this stream more efficient and now it's moving much more quickly, so things are not able to move up it anymore. And at the Haweswater Reservoir in Cumbria, which is one of English, it either is or it's really close to one of England's largest lakes. I'm not sure I don't have the name of the stream, but they had channelized the movement of a stream there, and it was too quick for salmon or trout to spawn. It was also leading to increased sediment downstream. The name of this stream was Swindale Beck, which sounds like a very English name for a stream. Be interested to find out what it means. And So they re-wiggled it, which was no easy task. It was very expensive, and farmland was forfeited for it. But by doing it, it allowed salmon and trout to come back, and it also increased habitat for them. So when you've got a wiggly stream, each bend in that stream, the water is moving more slowly, and that area can be used as habitat for river species. And when it's channelized, you get rid of those slow, curvy areas, and you don't have habitat anymore. So yeah, very expensive to do, but did have a very cool impact bringing trout and salmon back. People are pretty stoked about it. And as we've talked about in other weeks, we're seeing more extreme weather events coming through, and these can lead to more flooding. When you have a land that is allowing the stream to move as it wants to move, then you're helping to prepare for big flooding events by giving their space to be overflow and sediment to move through. Okay, we had a lot of BBC articles this week. I kind of have a rotation of places I look for different articles, so we're heavy on the BBC UK news this week. So shout out to if you're in the UK, this one's for you. If you enjoy. This next article, also from the BBC, is about lynx reintroduction. We'll put an image of a lynx here. This window I'm next to is very exposed, and there's a populated valley below me, so I'm interested. So I definitely feel very self-conscious being here speaking in the window. But I hope there's been some good birds in the tree. I hope there's been rain sounds as well. I'd like to get a microphone that I can record, like a microphone made for nature sounds, so I can do the eco show, and then I can also do just a spatial recording along with video, so it can be like a nice bedtime or relaxation track. So if this is not calming enough, that will be the ticket. Okay. So lynx reintroduction is being looked at in the UK. There are discussions about introducing 400 Eurasian lynx into the Highlands in Scotland. And some ideas are that it will help control roe deer, so small, they'll help control deer that munch on forest sprouts and things like that. So they're thinking it will benefit the growth of trees in the forest, and it may be a tourist attraction. But there's quite a bit of opposition from rural residents and workers who are saying that these lynx are very likely to prey on livestock. This reintroduction of lynx has worked in Germany, but this was in an area that was primarily used for forestry anyways. So it wasn't necessarily very mixed use. It was just for forestry. So then that had some tourism benefits because you were bringing something besides just forestry to the area. But lynx have been reintroduced also in Norway, and this hasn't been very successful there well, it may have been, I don't have information on how successful it is for lynx, but there's been large losses of stock to the lynx, and there've had to be big payouts in order to repay people for to repay pe- to repay people for losing stock like sheep and things like that to lynx. Researchers are saying there's little threat to humans. Part of the appeal is ecotourism, but I like the idea of introduction of lynx. I'm sure it's appealing to many people, but you gotta listen to the people who are on the ground. And you know, it sounds like it's gonna be disruptive, and like this ought to be explored definitely, but maybe in some different ways. I think Scotland has a ton of islands. Why not get some lynx islands going on? So you can't be yeah, as much as I like the idea of it, when you've got a mixed use landscape, it's important to listen to the people who are living on the land and that sort of thing. So we'll see how that goes. That is ongoing. And I think our last thing for today is just going to be some nice, pretty photos, because, and this will have been a couple weeks now, but recent enough, there was a super bloom in California after all these rains and things like that. I'm sure there was super bloom going on in other places in the western US, but the photos of the article that I saw was showing these satellite photos of super bloom flowers from space. So we'll leave you with some nice little photos. Maybe I'll have had them up while I'm talking now. So some nice photos of super blooms, some good desktop wallpaper for your computer screen or something like that. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. And yes, if you're a sloth listening again, if you've finished listening to this is probably several years in the future. But yeah, sloths, let me know what you thought. Did I represent you well? And we'll catch y'all next time. Bye.